How we doing, everyone? Today is Saturday, August the 26th, 2023. Just coming to you live here on YouTube as well as my Instagram channel, Abundant Capital Group. Just continuing our series, our training series on real estate note investing. We're going to talk about non-performing notes and continuing the series on the due diligence process. Um, So we'll kind of go through non-performing notes and things that you want to look for and how you approach looking at a deal that's non-performing. So we have about six other trainings that we've done so far. So you can go back and check those out. Starts at the beginning and kind of brings you up to this particular point on what a note is and everything like that. So let's just jump right in. So we're talking about non-performing notes today, and we'll go through the same steps that we did on the performing side on one of the other trainings that you can, like I said, go check out. We're going to go through the asset price, property value, numbers, uh, the property title, property taxes, property and proper documentation. So those are the things that we want to look at, when we are evaluating a potential non-performing or any note that we want to buy. We want to kind of go through those steps and see if this is worth pursuing. So when it comes to the asset price, obviously it's going to be set by whoever's selling it, or it could be a bid. Sometimes you have that process where you have to bid on it based on you doing your due diligence, and you give them a price and they say yes, no, or they counter it. And then the other way is that they just say, okay, I want $50,000 for this non-performing note. The property value. Now, when it comes to non-performing notes, it's just like in performing and when you are doing due diligence, it's very important that you get a good understanding of what the value of the property is. You want to try and get that as close to accurate as possible. Obviously, we're probably not going to get it right down to the exact number, but you want to be probably within a $5,000 to $7,000, maybe at most $10,000 range of the actual property amount, just so you know what you're buying and you know your investment to the value of the property. And then when it comes to non-performing notes, this is pretty important because when a non-performing note is when someone is not paying, they are behind. There's some type of life event or something that happened, and it's causing them not to pay on this particular loan. So we want to make sure that we have a good understanding of what the value of this property is, because if we're going to buy this, we know that we're buying something that's not paying us back immediately, and it's probably going to take us some time before we can start to receive payments. And then and so you want to be able to protect yourself in the deal. If you have to get the property back and do some other things like that, you want to make sure that you're at a good investment to value ratio. So the numbers in this instance, we can't calculate a return on investment, so to speak, because nobody's making a payment. We can look at it. If we get this property for X amount and we get the property back, what we could potentially sell it for based on what that value is. Again, that's why, it's very important that we understand that value. We can maybe make some projections there to say, okay, I'm buying it at, 50,000, it's worth 110,000. I could probably, if I get this property back, depending on the condition of the property, I can get at least, 65,000. So my return, I'm making 15,000 on my initial 50,000 that I put out, and that's a solid return. So you could do that, but in terms of like on a monthly basis and after 12 months what your return is, you can't calculate that because no one is making the payment in this non-performing situation. um, Also, with the property title, we want to make sure that when we're purchasing this first lien, this first position lien that's non-performing, we want to make sure that there's nothing out there that could jump our lien. Property taxes, something like that. In certain instances, HOA fees. in certain, counties and states and things like that. HOA fees if they're behind, and if you're buying something that has an HOA fee, could jump you if if those things are not taken care of, and if there is a tax sale, a tax deed sale, or something like that, it could jeopardize your position and wipe you out. So we want to make sure that when we look at the title, if things come up on there, we want to make sure that those things, whatever comes up on there, we want to make sure that they are not threatening our position in the first position. So as long as that's good, and you check that and you say that that's okay, whoever your title company is, or who you're working with to close this, says, yeah, these liens that are on here are kind of things that are just attached to them. We'll go with the person. It can't really do anything to jump your lien. You're in good position. So that's very important as well, because we don't want to lose out. Property taxes, obviously, if someone isn't making the mortgage payment, the taxes most likely aren't getting paid. There are some instances where the homeowner is responsible to pay for the taxes themselves, and has continued to make that payment, because obviously that's usually a lot less than what paying, a lot less, and you don't have to pay that each month. Usually you pay that quarterly or something like that, or twice a year. So if somebody is keeping up on the taxes, that could give you a really good indication that they probably want to stay. If we can possibly figure something out, modify this loan, bring down the payment, put some unpaid balance on the back end of it, make some changes to the interest rate possibly, this person may be in a position where they can start to pay. If they're paying the taxes for a reason. That's a pretty good indication that they want to stay. So if we do see that being paid, or there's a good attempt to make those payments consistently, we may want to think about possibly being able to modify the situation. But again, we just want to make sure that it's not a threat to our first position. Sometimes when you get a non-performing note, they've had a tax sale, so somebody has actually bought those taxes, and then they're accruing interest, but it hasn't gotten to a point where they were able to foreclose on the property, because there is a redemption period in most states. Sometimes it's like 1 to 2 years. It could be less in some states, more in some other states, but that's kind of the average. And they can't foreclose on it until that redemption period is over. So, if you, look up, call the county, you see the tax assessor's office, they'll let you know if it was sold and what date it was sold. And you can get an idea of if it is going to go to a tax deed sale, because if it goes to a tax deed sale, that will wipe out your first position. They will foreclose, and they will get the property based on that tax deed sale. So it's very important for us to check that, make sure that all of that is taken care of, and even if we have to make that payment, it's in our best interest to go ahead and make that payment. And then we want to factor that into, if we're paying that $50,000, and then I got to put an extra $2,500 into the deal to take care of the back taxes. We want to know what those numbers are compared to, again, our value, and make sure that we're in a good position. And then the property docs, the security agreement, what type is it? What type of foreclosure am I looking at based on the security agreement and the state that the property is in? Some states, the foreclosure process can be about 90 days or less. Other states could take years. There's some states that's taken 18 months, 24 months or longer for a foreclosure to happen. But again, a lot of times when buying non-performing notes, the seller of the note, depending on who they are, and a lot of times with these bigger institutions and larger banks and things of that we're buying from, they have started the foreclosure. They may be 50% down the road. They may be 75% down the road. We can find that out, and then we can substitute ourselves or replace them now that we're the new owner in that process, so we don't have to start over again. So there may be some non-performing loans in certain states where they have loan foreclosures, but they may be 80% done. So now, maybe I can get this done within 6 months, less than a year, maybe less than 6 months, depending on, where it is again, and how far along that original note seller got with foreclosure. And then again, it works the opposite way. Maybe they haven't started or they just started. So if they just started, then, we want to think about where this is, how long it's going to take. Is it worth me, you know, um, having this amount of money out, and I know that I can't get it back for 1 to 2 years or longer? Am I okay with that? So that is going to make a big difference. So, um, like I was saying, the investment to value is very important on this, because we want to make sure. A lot of times when we purchase non-performing notes, we want to make sure that we're paying at maximum about 55%, and that's a lot of times if you're going to take the property back. If if we go through this due diligence and we get a good indication, that this person, um, wants to stay, a lot of times we can see modification documents, a letter as to what happened, communication with the borrower. Again, they're paying the taxes. If you look at the property, they're keeping up on the landscaping. They're making sure that the exterior of the property is in good condition. These are all signs that this particular person may want to stay. You may increase that. I probably wouldn't, because you always have to factor in worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is if I get this property back. And we really don't want to be probably over about 55% of the as is value of the property. What is it worth right now, today? And again, we're not taking into consideration anything that needs to be done on the inside of the property, because a lot of times we can't see that. So that's why we want to, kind of err on the side of caution, because say we do get this property back and there's a lot of work to be done. That's going to affect, what you can sell the property for, because whoever's buying it, if it's an investor, they're going to have to probably put some work into it. So that's going to affect what they're going to give you for it. So we want to be somewhere, at 55% or less. Obviously, the lower you go, the better it is for you, the better chances, that you have of turning this into a really good deal for yourself and making some money on the back end. But, that's kind of the ratio that we want to be at on a non performing note. So the again, the unpaid, when we look at the unpaid balance on these things, that'll tell us if this person has equity. And then again, that can be another key indicator. Is this person going to, am I possibly going to be able to work something out with them? If I buy, a non-performing note at $50,000, it's worth 100,000. Well, actually, it's worth 100,000, but that unpaid balance, let's say, is 75,000. So this person actually has equity in this property based on what it's worth. And that's what we're seeing a lot of times in this particular market here. If you're looking at, a lot of markets around the country, the value of properties has gone up, limited supply and things of that nature. So it's holding steady that most properties these days do have equity in them. A lot of properties have equity. So if I buy a non-performing note and the buyer, the person in there has equity, chances are that they're not going to walk away from $25,000 worth of cash. They're either probably going to, modify with me if they can, if they have the ability, or if I pursue the foreclosure, they're probably going to put the property on the market and sell it. So now I've paid that 50,000. I still have an unpaid balance of 75,000 that needs to be paid off. Plus, and that includes any fees and anything that's owed. The total is 75,000. So when they go to pay that property off and they get an offer for 100, 110,000, whatever, I'm going to get that 75. So I've made all my money back plus, something on top of my investment. So that's why now in this particular time when this video is made, it's a, good time to really look at these non-performing assets. Because like I said, a lot of them have equity. So being able to work something out with the particular borrower or them potentially selling the property and paying you off in full, are higher than they were, say, when in like 2008, when we had that great financial crisis. A lot of houses are underwater. So again, that unpaid balance is going to tell you, is this person underwater, or do they have, some equity, or do they have very little equity? Now, if the unpaid balance is like 95,000 and the property is worth 100, the chances are that this person, selling the property, and you getting paid with what you want, maybe a lot less, because they don't have really, anything in it. So these things will kind of help you with the story of the property and what possibly your exit strategies could be, by understanding what that unpaid balance is uh, in your initial investment into the property. If the property is vacant, that'll be another indicator. This person has just moved on. And this may be something that you want to focus on. You may want to focus on looking at non-performing vacant properties, because nine over nine times out of 10, you're going to get that property back. Very rarely does somebody move out of the property that's, in foreclosure. You call them up and say, oh, okay, I'm your, new lender, new note holder, and, I'm going to, we can modify this. They usually won't move back into the property based on where they are now to pick up payments and everything like that. A lot of times, once they've gone, they're gone. So again, that could be a focus of what you want to do. Look for vacant, non-performing notes. Pay, 50 cents on a dollar, 55 cents on a dollar. Finish out the foreclosure, or possibly contact the person, and maybe they'll sign over the deed, do a deed in lieu and sign the property over to you. And now you can then go ahead and, work on your exit strategies. Now that you have the property back, that may be a focus that you want to do. So, that'll be, again, being that the property is vacant, can be a very good indicator of what you can do, with the property. So we talked about the equity piece. Also, what we try to look at when it comes to the numbers is the rent. A lot of times in these areas, the rent may be more than what it would cost to own this particular property. Believe it or not, in some of these lower price band asset classes, your payment may be $500, $600, $700 a month for your principal and interest. And then when you include in your taxes and insurance, let's just say, it's $800 or $900. A lot of times, a three bedroom apartment could be $1,000, could be $1,100. And it just all depends on where it is. So the likelihood of someone wanting to purchase this or stay in this property is higher, because they know that, to rent the house next door, they're actually going to be paying more money. So that'll give you a good indication too. Now, if it's vice versa, if the rent is a lot less, let's say the rent is, you can get a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment for $500 or $600, but you have to pay, $800-900 to purchase this property. Obviously they're saving money, so they may, want to just move on. So this will give you a good indicator too, as to what your possible exit strategy could be, or what potentially could happen based on that rental value in that neighborhood. Is it more likely that they may want to stay here because they're paying less than renting, or vice versa? So we want to look at that, as well. So see what else that we have here. Again, when we talk about the liens, you have involuntary and then you have voluntary liens. You want to, just when you look at anything that comes up on that title report, is this going to affect my position, my first position? And am I in jeopardy of this particular lien, whatever it may be, jumping my first position? If the answer is no, you don't worry about it. If the answer is yes, we have to look into solving that, paying that, getting it taken care of prior to purchasing the note, and then factoring that into your overall purchase price. Once we look at these things and say, Oh, okay, you have made an initial bid of 50,000, but I got to make a $5,000 payment towards the taxes. I got to go back to that person who's selling this and say, look, you know, I didn't know that this needs to be paid. We got to take care of this. Can we make some adjustment? Now, it's up to you to say, they can say yes, no, maybe so. But it's up to you to make the decision now. Is this extra 5,000? Now I'm in it for 5,500. Am I still okay? I mean, I'm in it for 55,000 and it's worth 100, 110. But let's just say the numbers were a little bit more tighter. Maybe the property was only worth 90. Now I got to put an extra 5,000 into it. I don't know if I necessarily, want to do that. Maybe it puts me out of my comfort level. So, again, it's very important to know, what's the lien priority, which ones are going to affect me, which ones don't I have to worry about right now. And we talked about the property taxes. Now, when it comes to the documentation, we're going to finish up, probably with this here. There's assignments and there are launches. The assignments is when the security agreement that goes with the note, because you have a note and you have a security agreement. We talked about that initially. So to transfer this over to you, an assignment is for the security agreement. So if it's a deed of trust, a mortgage, a land contract, or something like that, that gets assigned. That's an assignment over to you. The note itself, the IOU itself, is transferred through an allonge. So whatever that note is on the property, that'll get transferred over into an allonge. So we want to make sure that we have those two pieces of paper, or however many pieces of paper it is, that those two things come over to us. That's what we're looking for. And we want to make sure that, were those things passed properly in the past, if this was sold before. We want to make sure that we get make sure that we see the proof of the assignments and the allonges if there were previous owners. Sometimes you may have 3, 4, 5 owners prior to you. And we just want to make sure that things were, there was no break in that chain there, because you would have to potentially go back and fix that, either yourself or that note seller. So we just want to make sure that we, pass that off. So just some other things, again, payment history, because we're dealing with non-performing notes, they're not paying. Does it really make a difference what their payment history is? We know that they're not paying now. So it's, not something that's dire that we need, because we know that they're having some issues currently. When we talked about, knowing the type of deed that we have, and just knowing what that is, what type of deed is in this particular state where we're buying this property, and make sure that it's transferred over to us properly. So that's it for the due diligence on non-performing notes for this week's training. Next week we will, I think we'll get into, what do we get into next week? I'm not absolutely sure just yet, but next week we'll continue the series. I'm going to look, where we should go next, because we kind of talked about the due diligence and everything like that. So, maybe we'll start to actually look at some deals or something like that, but I'm not absolutely sure. But we'll be back next week, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, continuing our series on real estate note investing. If you want to, you can always go back and see the other trainings 1 through 6. This is number 7. It's a great time to look into notes right now, based on the market that we're in, as an investment and going into the future, especially, for what, like I said, what's going on now. So, take advantage of the training. It is free. It's pretty thorough. We're kind of going step by step to break this up into smaller pieces for people so they can understand it and it makes sense to them. And we'll be back next week to continue the training. So we'll see you 12:30 Eastern Standard Time next week. Have a good one.